Have you ever scratched your head wondering why some of the most incompetent, reckless, or downright foolish people end up running countries, companies, or even your local community group? It's a baffling phenomenon, one that seems to defy logic. Yet, over 500 years ago, a sharp-minded Italian named Niccolò Machiavelli figured it out. In his infamous book, The Prince, he dissected the raw mechanics of power with a clarity that still resonates today. His core insight? Power doesn't always go to the wise, the virtuous, or the capable. Sometimes, maybe even often, it's the fools who climb to the top. This lesson is a deep dive into why this happens, how it happens, and what we can do about it. Designed for a YouTube audience, it's packed with stories, insights, and practical takeaways to keep you engaged and leave you smarter about the world. Whether you're a student, a professional, or just someone curious about why things seem so chaotic, this exploration of Machiavelli's wisdom will help you understand power, spot foolish leadership, and navigate life with a sharper perspective. Let's unravel the paradox of why the foolish end up in charge and what Machiavelli knew about it. Section 1. Defining the foolish in power. What do we mean by foolish leaders? They're not just people who lack intelligence. Foolishness in leadership often shows up as arrogance, impulsiveness, or a stubborn disconnect from reality. These are the bosses who ignore evidence, the politicians who make promises they can't keep, or the executives who tank their companies chasing short-term glory. Their decisions might make you wince, but somehow they've clawed their way to the top. Foolish leaders often excel at getting power, even if they fumble at using it. They might be charming, cunning, or just lucky enough to ride a wave of opportunity. The problem is, once they're in charge, their flaws, whether it's overconfidence, ignorance, or a lack of foresight, start to show. To understand why they rise, we need to step into Machiavelli's world and see power through his unfiltered lens. This section alone could fill pages with examples, but let's start with a simple truth. Foolishness isn't always obvious at first. A leader might dazzle with charisma or bold promises, only to reveal their shortcomings when the stakes get high. Think of a CEO who charms investors with a flashy pitch but drives the company into bankruptcy with reckless decisions. Or a politician who wins an election on fiery rhetoric, only to stumble when faced with governing. The question isn't just why they fail. It's why we let them rise in the first place. Section 2. Machiavelli's world, power without illusions. Niccolò Machiavelli lived in Renaissance Italy, a chaotic era of warring city-states, backstabbing alliances, and ruthless ambition. Born in 1469 in Florence, he served as a diplomat and advisor, rubbing shoulders with princes, popes, and mercenaries. He saw the best and worst of human nature, greed, betrayal, and occasional brilliance. His experiences shaped The Prince, a book that's less a celebration of power and more a cold, hard look at how it works. Machiavelli didn't care about ideals. He cared about results. To him, power was a game of strategy, not morality. He argued that human nature is predictable, driven by fear, greed, and the hunger for status. The foolish often rise because they're willing to play this game without hesitation, while the cautious or principled hold back. But staying in power? That's where the foolish often falter, and Machiavelli had plenty to say about why. Let's break down 3 of his key ideas to understand this paradox. 2.1. The Wheel of Fortune. Machiavelli believed that luck, or fortuna, is a major player in who gets power. Think of it like a cosmic slot machine. Sometimes, the right person pulls the lever at the right time. A foolish leader might rise because of a crisis, a family name, or sheer chance. For example, a corporate manager might get promoted during a company shakeup, not because they're skilled, but because they were in the room when the decision was made. Fortune can lift anyone to power, but it doesn't guarantee they'll keep it. This idea of luck isn't just a historical quirk. It's alive today. Consider a modern politician who rides a wave of public anger to victory, only to flounder when faced with the complexities of governance. Machiavelli would say their rise was less about merit and more about timing. But he'd also warn that fortune is fickle. Without skill, the lucky fall fast. 2.2. The art of appearance. Machiavelli was blunt. Leaders don't need to be good. They just need to look good. A foolish leader with a knack for optics can outshine a wiser one. They master the art of seeming competent, confident, or caring, even if it's all smoke and mirrors. In today's world, this might be a social media savvy influencer turned politician whose viral moments mask a lack of substance. Machiavelli knew that people judge based on what they see, not what's true. This focus on appearance explains why foolish leaders often thrive in the short term. They project strength, make bold promises, or tell people what they want to hear. But when the curtain falls, when their decisions lead to chaos, the illusion crumbles. The trick is, by then, they're often already in power. 2.3. Fear versus love. Machiavelli's most famous advice? It's better to be feared than loved, but never hated. Foolish leaders often lean into fear, bullying subordinates, making threats, or ruling through intimidation because it's easier than earning genuine loyalty. A manager who yells to get results or a politician who demonizes opponents might gain compliance, but it's a shaky foundation. Fear can backfire, turning allies into enemies and sowing the seeds of rebellion. Machiavelli's point wasn't to endorse cruelty, but to highlight a reality. Foolish leaders often choose the path of least resistance. Fear is quick. Love takes time. But those who rely on fear without building trust often find themselves isolated when the tide turns. Section 3. Why Fools Rise: The Mechanics of Power. Machiavelli's ideas give us a framework, but why do foolish people keep winning at the power game? It's not just luck or charm. There are deeper psychological and structural reasons that tilt the playing field in their favor. Let's explore 4 key mechanisms that explain this phenomenon. 3.1. The confidence trap. Confidence is like catnip for humans. We're drawn to people who seem sure of themselves, even if that confidence is unwarranted. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with limited skills often overestimate their abilities, while the truly competent doubt themselves. A foolish leader's overconfidence makes them bold. They speak up, take risks, and seize opportunities that others shy away from. In a boardroom, election, or even a family business, the loudest voice often gets heard. A mediocre candidate might outshine a thoughtful one simply by projecting certainty. Think of a startup founder who convinces investors with a bold pitch, even if their business plan is shaky. Confidence isn't competence, but it's a powerful shortcut to power. 3.2. Systems reward short-term. Wins our world, whether it's politics, business, or even social media, loves quick results. A politician who promises tax cuts or a CEO who boosts stock prices gets applause, even if their plans are unsustainable. Foolish leaders thrive in this environment because they're willing to make flashy promises without worrying about the long-term fallout. This short-term bias is baked into our systems. Voters reward candidates who deliver sound bites, not nuanced policies. Shareholders cheer executives who cut costs, even if it means gutting innovation. The foolish don't mind. They're happy to bask in the spotlight, even if the stage is about to collapse. 3.3. Manipulation and opportunism. Machiavelli would tip his hat to leaders who exploit divisions or crises to gain power. Foolish leaders often excel at this, not because they're master strategists, but because they're shameless. They stoke fear, anger, or tribalism to rally support, even if their endgame is vague. Think of a politician who blames a scapegoat for economic woes, or a manager who pits teams against each other to dodge accountability. This tactic works because humans are emotional creatures. A leader who taps into outrage or loyalty can bypass scrutiny, at least for a while. But as Machiavelli warned, manipulation without a plan is a house of cards waiting to fall. 3.4. The Peter Principle. The Peter Principle is a modern idea that fits perfectly with Machiavelli's worldview. People rise to their level of incompetence. In hierarchies, promotions often reward past performance, not future potential. A great salesperson might become a terrible manager. A brilliant engineer might flop as a CTO. The foolish don't always start out foolish. They just get in over their heads. This principle explains why competent people can become foolish leaders. They're thrust into roles they're not ready for, and instead of adapting, they double down on what worked before. Or worse, they fake it. The result? A trail of bad decisions and a frustrated team. Section 4. Historical examples. Fools in charge. To bring these ideas to life, let's look at 3 historical figures who rose to power but fell to their own foolishness. These stories aren't just entertaining. They're cautionary tales about what happens when power and folly collide. 4.1. Emperor Nero, the performer who burned Rome. Nero, Roman emperor from 54 to 68 AD, was the poster child for foolish leadership. Born into power, he had the charisma of a rock star, staging lavish performances as a poet and musician. But his obsession with personal glory blinded him to the empire's needs. He spent wildly on vanity projects, neglected the military, and alienated the Senate with his erratic behavior. When a massive fire ravaged Rome in 64 AD, rumors swirled that Nero had started it to clear land for his palace, or worse, that he fiddled while the city burned. Whether true or not, his response was tone-deaf. He blamed Christians, sparking brutal persecutions that further destabilized Rome. Nero's rise was fueled by lineage and theatrics, but his foolishness, his inability to prioritize the empire over his ego, led to rebellion and his eventual suicide. 4.2. King George III, the stubborn monarch. King George III of Britain, who reigned during the American Revolution, wasn't a fool in the cartoonish sense. He was diligent and devout, but his stubbornness and rigid belief in royal authority made him a case study in foolish leadership. When the American colonies protested taxation without representation, George saw it as a personal challenge to his divine right to rule. Instead of negotiating, he doubled down, sending troops to quash the rebellion. His refusal to compromise turned a manageable dispute into a full-blown war. By 1783, Britain had lost the colonies, a blow to its global power. George's failure wasn't a lack of intelligence, but a lack of adaptability, a hallmark of foolish leadership. Machiavelli would have urged him to bend with the winds of fortune, but George stood firm and paid the price. 4.3. The Fall of Enron, Modern Corporate Folly. Fast forward to the 21st century, And we see the same patterns in corporate disasters like Enron. In the 1990s, Enron was a darling of Wall Street, led by executives like Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling, who projected boundless confidence. They promised endless growth through complex financial schemes, dazzling investors and analysts. But behind the scenes, Enron was a house of cards, hiding massive debts through accounting tricks. When the truth came out in 2001, Enron collapsed, wiping out billions in wealth and thousands of jobs. Lay and Skilling weren't stupid. They were brilliant in some ways, but their arrogance and refusal to face reality were textbook foolishness. They believed their own hype, ignored warnings, and prioritized image over integrity. Machiavelli would have called them out for lacking virtù, the ability to adapt and act decisively when fortune turned against them. Section 5. Modern examples. Fools in today's world. The patterns Machiavelli identified haven't gone away. They've just adapted to our era. Today's foolish leaders thrive in politics, business, and even social media. Consider the politician who dominates headlines with polarizing tweets, but fumbles when faced with policy details. Or the startup founder who raises millions on a flashy idea, only to crash when the product fails to deliver. These figures ride waves of charisma, media attention, or public frustration, just as Machiavelli's princes did. One striking example is the rise and fall of certain tech CEOs in the early 2020s. Take a figure like Adam Neumann of WeWork. Neumann's vision of revolutionizing work captivated investors who poured billions into his co-working startup. His charisma and bold promises masked a chaotic business model. WeWork was losing money faster than it could grow. When the company's IPO collapsed in 2019, Neumann's reckless spending and lack of focus were exposed, costing him his job and the company its momentum. Or look at politics, where leaders often rise by tapping into public anger rather than offering solutions. A populist might win an election by railing against elites, only to struggle with the nuts and bolts of governing. These modern examples echo Machiavelli's warnings. Power rewards those who seize it, but keeping it requires more than bluster. Section 6. The consequences of foolish leadership. When fools hold power, the fallout can be devastating. Economies tank, societies fracture, and trust erodes. In history, Nero's reign left Rome weaker and more divided. George III's stubbornness lost Britain and empire. Enron's collapse destroyed livelihoods and shook faith in corporate governance. But the damage isn't just systemic, it's personal. If you've ever worked under a reckless boss, you know the toll. Burnout, frustration, or even job loss. Citizens under a foolish leader might face economic hardship, social unrest, or worse. The tragedy is that the foolish often escape the worst consequences, leaving others to clean up the mess. Machiavelli warned that leaders who rely on luck or manipulation without virtù, the blend of skill, adaptability, and foresight, eventually fall. But their fall can take years, and the collateral damage can last decades. So how do we protect ourselves and our systems from this cycle of folly? Section 7. Practical takeaways. Navigating a world of fools. Machiavelli's insights aren't just for kings or CEOs. They're for anyone navigating a world where power and foolishness collide. Here are 5 practical lessons to apply in your own life, whether you're a student, a professional, or just trying to make sense of the chaos. 7.1. Spot the red flags. Learn to recognize foolish leadership before it's too late. Look for leaders who dismiss expertise, make snap decisions, or prioritize image over results. If your boss ignores data to push their pet project, or a politician dodges hard questions with slogans, take note. Ask, do their actions match their words? Are they surrounded by yes men or people who challenge them? 7.2. Don't fall for charisma. Charisma is a tool, not a qualification. When choosing leaders, whether in a workplace, election, or even a community group, focus on their track record, not just their charm. A flashy speech might feel inspiring, but check their history. Have they delivered before? Do they have a plan or just a personality? 7.3. Build systems to check power. Foolish leaders thrive where accountability is weak. Support systems that hold power in check, like independent media, strong institutions, or workplace policies that encourage dissent. If you're in a leadership role, surround yourself with advisors who aren't afraid to call you out. A single honest voice can prevent a disaster. 7.4. Cultivate your own virtue. Machiavelli's concept of virtue is about being adaptable, strategic, and resilient. In your own life, this means sharpening skills like critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and long-term planning. Read widely, question assumptions, and learn to navigate uncertainty. Whether you're aiming for leadership or just surviving a chaotic workplace, virtue is your shield against the foolish. 7.5. Stay skeptical of promises. Foolish leaders love grand promises, tax cuts, instant profits, or utopian visions. Be skeptical. Ask for evidence, not just enthusiasm. If a leader's plan sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Protect yourself by focusing on facts and questioning hype. Section 8. The flip side, when foolishness works. Here's a twist. Sometimes foolishness is a strategy. Machiavelli admired leaders who could play the fool deliberately, using unpredictability to keep enemies guessing. Think of historical figures like Winston Churchill, whose quirky habits and brash style masked a brilliant strategist, or modern leaders who court controversy to dominate attention, like certain media-savvy politicians or CEOs. The catch? Strategic foolishness requires self-awareness. The truly foolish lack this, and that's their undoing. A leader who seems erratic but knows their limits can be formidable. One who believes their own hype is a disaster waiting to happen. The lesson? Don't dismiss someone as foolish too quickly. They might be playing a deeper game, but don't trust them blindly either. Section 9. Breaking the cycle. So why do the most foolish people end up in power? Because human nature rewards confidence over competence, spectacle over substance, and luck over logic. Machiavelli saw this in the courts of Renaissance Italy, and we see it today in boardrooms, parliaments, and social media feeds. The foolish rise when we let them, when we fall for their charm, ignore their flaws, or fail to demand better. But we're not powerless. By understanding the mechanics of power, spotting the signs of folly, and cultivating our own wisdom, we can navigate a world where fools often wear the crown. Whether you're leading a team, voting in an election, or just trying to thrive in a messy world, Machiavelli's lessons are a guide to surviving and outsmarting the foolish. What's the one thing you'll take away from this? Maybe it's a new skepticism of flashy leaders, a resolve to demand accountability, or a commitment to building your own virtue. Whatever it is, let's learn from the past to shape a better future. Because if Machiavelli was right about one thing, it's this: power is a game, and the wise play it better. Section 10. Final thoughts. A call to action. This lesson isn't just about understanding why foolish people end up in power. It's about empowering you to do something about it. The world will always have its Neros, its George III's, its Enrons. But it also has people like you. People who can question, challenge, and change the game. Start small. Call out folly when you see it. Support systems that reward competence, and never stop sharpening your own skills. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to glorify power. He wrote it to demystify it. By peeling back the curtain, he gave us the tools to navigate a world where the foolish often lead. So go out there, armed with his wisdom, and make your mark. The fools might win some battles, but with insight and action, we can win the war.